Hello and welcome to my realism sheet that I have been making for about the past 3 months, ever since Buzzco kind of went AWOL. In conjunction, if you use that sheet before, this isn't a direct replacement in terms of the complexity, but it does work, and the people that tested it have seemed to be happy with it. So hopefully you get some form of enjoyment out of it, but that's all down to you. So I'm going to go through each individual tab, explaining what everything does and how it works together, and the purpose behind it all. The only thing I'd say is, whilst this is supposed to give you realism and help towards making your career more realistic, you will have to also employ your own kind of rules and common sense. So the calculator can throw up to say whether it's realistic you sign a Brazilian wonder kid, but if you're playing in a country where Brazilian wonder kids don't naturally go and play, then maybe you need to kind of say to yourself that you shouldn't sign that player. But we'll go through that anyway as it goes along. So to start off with, this is the first page. So this is rules and explanation. It's not very complex and detailed at the moment. It just gives a brief summary of what each page does. This guide and video is probably going to be a lot more useful to you, but it's just a case of referring, or if you want to quickly go back and check something, then you can use this tab to start off with. Down the bottom, you can see that all the tabs are color coded. So the black one obviously states for rules. Anything that is in orange is what is counted as optional. You don't have to do any of this stuff. It's just a case of that if you want to keep track of things in your career, or if you want to do the seasonal events, that's more than welcome to. The main bit of the actual sheet is in the green part, which is your season, and then the following seasons that you duplicate from this onwards. And lastly, you have the red one, which is the data sheet. Now, this just contains all the information that we use to put in for when you're picking your team, and just to give the sheet a bit more of a home-based feel. I would advise anyone actually going in there and editing, or even actually going into it, because there's so many images and details logged into that sheet. It takes a while to load and can actually cause issues with the sheet crashing, or just not loading correctly. But if you do have any issues, you're more than welcome to reach out in the help channel on our Discord, and just mention what you want to change in there. At the moment, we're currently running career mode sheet version 1.4, so this was the base, and then I've built onto further things. Quite happy with how it's all kind of worked out and how it's working for now, especially because the game's coming to the end period as we reach the summer. Depending on how the next EAFC game comes out, I'll then update to version 2, which will be all the teams in the correct slots, anything to do with any changes that the game makes. Like last year, they changed the coaching and the training. Next year, if they do anything to do with that, the sheet will incorporate any of the new things, and hopefully should be launched roughly around the same time that the game fully comes out. But for now, there isn't really much else I can do with this, and I think version 1.4 is the end. What I will say is, look, because it requires you to be kind of creative in your own rules. If there is anything that you notice that maybe doesn't quite work for your career, and you want to change it on your sheet, you can reach out to me as well, and I can do personalization, so I can just log into your sheet, make a few changes just so it kind of works better for you in terms of like the formulas for the calculators. Yeah, but if any of that stuff, you can just reach out to me in the help channel on our Discord. Okay, so moving on. First one, we have the team sheet on the optional section, so all the oranges. So in the team sheet here, as you can see, it's a blank page. You have 3 drop-down boxes. So the first one tells you to pick a country. So you're going to choose a country that you're going to work in as a manager. So for this example, I'm going to stick to what I know. So I'm going to go with England. And then secondly, it's going to ask you to pick a league. So here you have the Premier League, Championship, League 1, League 2. These all change depending on which country you just chosen. So if I go back and change it to Argentina, The only league in the EAFC database at the moment is the Ligue Professionnelle de Football, so that's the only one it'll give you. If you choose France, you get Ligue 1 and Ligue 2. And that was my poor attempt at a French accent. So we'll go back to England, and we're going to go choosing the Premier League. And as you can see, it loads in the each country's either official badge or their FA badge. A lot of this was kind of the I had to pour in, and it took a bit of time to kind of figure out correct things. If you do notice that the logos are incorrect, let me know and I'll change them to the correct one. It's hard for me to decipher, obviously, not knowing every country. Yep, the league logo will also be there. I tend to get those off Google, so hopefully they should be all right. And then lastly, you're going to get a third box to pick your team from that league. As I said, at the moment, version 1.4 is based on EAFC24, so all the teams are in the correct leagues. All teams are correct based on what the game is. Obviously, next season, as teams drop in and out of the game, I will be updating that for version 2. And that'll be for EAFC24. Both sheets will still be available even going on, so version 1.4 will stay and then version 2 will come in as a separate sheet. So anyone who's coming in and wants to play the older game, you're more than welcome to keep going with the version 1.4 sheet. Okay, so for now we're going to pick, let's say Liverpool as our team. So as you can see, it loads in the club badge. You get the stadium view, which majority are from this angle that I've tried to get, and then it tells you the titles and the cups that this club has won. Now, each title, cup, and continental titles, that's a range of everything. So for titles, will be all the league titles, so not just the Premier. So just the Premier League. So what I've done for each country, rather than tracking, the Division 3 title, I just tracked the top league in that country's trophy. So for Liverpool, they've won it 19 times, whether that was the Premier League or the old Division 1. But in their history, it's 19 times. Once again, if you noticed I've got any of these wrong for your clubs, let me know. Domestic cups, that will include FA and League Cup. And I also think it's the Charity Shield as well. And continental titles was difficult, so it means Champions League, UEFA Cup, Conference League, the old Intertoto Cups. So anything to do with a European continental title will be in there. As you can see, if I change the clubs, so if we go to Denmark and the Superliga, and then we go to Brøndby, as you can see, the trophies will update to their correct leagues, and you can see the stadium as well. We also get the information here, so when the team was formed, the stadium name, the capacity, the overall set on FIFA default. These will change because depending on when the game updates the squad list, that might have changed, but generally that was what the most recent when I did it kind of scores was, and a star rating to start with. Look, says this page is quite customizable apart from these three boxes. So let's say if you quite like, so if you want to be Brøndby, whose colours are yellow and blue, you can actually go in and just, there you go, and just make little slight changes to make your game, your sheets personalised for you as well. But for now, we'll keep it to England and Liverpool. Now, this doesn't actually have much of a link to other sheets, apart from the fact it'll just add your club crest to places. So don't worry too much if you can't be bothered to fill that in either. It's completely optional. I just think it adds a nice little touch just to kind of go back. And also in the data sheet, you'll be able to change the trophies that you've won. So if you tracking your career thoroughly and you say you've won 2 more Premier League titles, you will be able to go in the data sheet, find Liverpool, add 2 more titles, change the number from 19 to 21. It'll update there. So when you go back to this, you'll be able to look at your trophy list. Okay, the next tab is the management stat tracker. So what this is just personalised for you. So as you can see, the club crests are now added in. And once again, everything's customizable to how you want it. This is just a baseline sheet, so if you want to stick some red in there with the text as white to make it more livable colours, you're more than welcome to. That's up to you, how you see fit. So on here you have an insert manager picture. If you're playing as a real manager, you want to stick a real manager's picture in. If you're playing yourself, you can stick your own picture in. Or if you want to create a new character, you can just fill in with AI pictures, whatever you want to do there. Underneath you have name, age, nationality, management style, trophies, fairly simple. What I tend to do, if you're making either myself or a new manager, you can just kind of create your own data for this, completely falsify it, just to kind of add story and depth to your career. If it's a real one, obviously just fill in the details as they go along. So if this was, say, Jurgen Klopp, obviously I know it's left now, but if you had Jurgen Klopp, you could fill in his previous clubs and his history, how many appearances for the club he managed, how many years, how many league titles, domestic cups, everything filled in here under previous trophies. This section here is just for the game itself, so when you start playing, you'll fill in these details here. Which can all be found on one of the management tabs on the EAFC game. And here, from when you start the game, you'll be filling out what team you're playing as, where you finished in the league, did you win any cups, and did you win the continental trophies. And that'll have the year. Over on the right hand side, what I'll say is, if you can see, these boxes are in yellow, and you'll see these going throughout the whole sheet. What these mean is these are boxes that have formulas in that kind of be working with either other sheets or in conjunction with other things. So try not to edit them, because obviously you'll affect the formulas that are already put in. If you do accidentally press something, in theory you should get this warning box pop up, and then it's just a simple case of just saying just cancel. If you press OK, it lets you edit, but just cancel off for now, and you still have it. If you do accidentally delete, there's two pieces of advice I could give. The first one is I'll contact myself on the help channel, and I'll be able to log into your sheet if you give me access and put the formula back for you. Or you can just find the base one that you've downloaded from, find the formula, copy and paste, and put it back into the correct cell. But if that seems too complicated, just contact myself and I'll take a look for you. So what you will do in the white box is, as you put your games played, how many you've won, you've drawn, lost, goals and goals against, and a win percentage will be struck up. This will go into the total, and also the totals for your current season. For your current career. So after 5 years, you might go back to see how many games you've played, how many you've won, how many goals you've scored, and how many against. It's just a nice little stat tracker there, but it looks as this tab is part of the optional. It just depends on how much you want to track your careers. Next to the player stat tracker. So what this is so starting from when you first start your career, you'll put all your players in here, and you'll be able to keep track of when they leave the club, what their overalls was when they left, and their total appearances, goals, assists, and clean sheets. This is just for people who want to see a player kind of break a club record. So let's say the most appearances in the Premier League, or most Premier League goals, or Champions League, or anything like that. This is a way of you kind of keeping track of your players and looking back on history. Probably not worth it if you're only going to plan to do a season or two. If you're planning to do a full 10 to 15 season career, it might be worth something to look into. But once again, this is completely optional. The only formulas here, which you can see is growth, is always set to zero, so you won't need to change anything there. It automatically just works out from the starting to the final overall, whether it was a plus or minus, and puts it in for you. The next tab, we have the staff tab. So this is in conjunction with my own set rules that I've employed. It's up to you if you want to continue with that. What I would say is it kind of does work with the realism, but you might think that it doesn't quite work for you, but that's up to you. So on the staff page, you have the coaches list. So here you'll be listing all the coaches that you hire for your club. So the name, the star rating that they are in the current area that they were working in. So let's say you can see a coach who's got 4 stars in attack, 3 stars in midfield, 2 in defence, and 1 in goalkeeper. So what you'll do is, let's say you're going to assign them to an attack. So you'll put area attack, how many stars they've got for there. So 4, and the style, which will be based on your style that you've chosen for the club at the start. So Gegenpress, or counter attack, or park the bus. Whatever the style is, you want to get the coach that's similar to that. The regions locked at the bottom here. This section is basically based on your club star rating. I've assigned how many youth players your academy can hold, and also what scouting regions that you can do. This just kind of stops you from going a little bit too crazy and just pump your academy full of wonder kids, and then in 2 seasons' time you've just got these absolute beasts and 19-year-old 90 rated players dominating your league. Yeah, so if you're a 3-star club, you'll be able to hold 10 youth players in your youth academy, and you'll also be able to scout in 3 regions. And what I mean by regions is, when you first go onto the scouting page, it kind of just shows you the continents with the dots. So you have like North America, South America, Europe, Southern Europe, these little dots, Asia. These dots are represented as a region. So if you're neighbouring countries, you're a 1-star, it means any country that's kind of connected via the border. So if you are, let's say, Austria, you will have Germany, Belgium, all those kind of countries that are connected via the border. You'll be able to scout in, but you won't be able to go outside of that region. Then when you move up to 2-star club, you'd then be able to then scout that whole entire region. So then for Austria, we'd be able to look at France and Holland and any countries that are not connected. Yeah, so as you can proceed up to the 5-star club, and then you've got the entire world to look at, and you'll have 16 players that you can hold in your academy at one time. What this means as well, when I say when it holds, it means once you reach that number, you can't put any more players into the youth academy. Now, some people will just go into the academy and go, oh, okay, this player's rubbish, I'll just release him. What I'd say to kind of keep realism is, don't release any youth players. Instead, let them come up, because at some point when they turn about 17 to 18, they will say that they want to move up to the first team, and then it's up to you to kind of dictate if you want to take them or not. Now, if you take them, they go into your first team squad, no problem. If they don't, after about, I think it's about 3 to 4 weeks, they will leave the club naturally and go elsewhere. In which case, that frees up a space for you to then find another youth player. This will just slow down the terms of how many youth players are coming into your club. It might be a case of you get 4 really good youth players and you want to put them into your squad straight away. That's fine, do that, and then you can put another 4 into the academy. But you'll also not want to overfill your first team, because then if they're not playing, their potential's not going up, and they also grow a lot better in the youth academy, because it's almost like they're being given constant team action, so that their overall will start rising without actually having to be played, and their happiness isn't affected, so they're not going to moan that they're not playing as well. So I tend to kind of leave players into the youth academy as long as possible, and then usually I'll just wait until they ask to be promoted or not, and then make a decision then to promote to the club if their overall and potential is good enough. If not, then I'll release them. This just kind of slows how many youth players you get coming through. I seem to be getting between 1 to 2 players a season coming into my first team, and there's a reason for that, which I'll explain as we go along. Next, we have the scouts. So as you can see at the top, we've got scout number 1. You can insert the name, and it has a star. Now, what this star means is this is based on your club. So if you're a 1-star club, you can only have 1 scout. Now, you won't be able to get a second scout until your club becomes a full 2-star. Even if it's 1.5, it's not 2-star, so you'll still only have 1 scout. You'll have to wait until you reach that second star on your team overall to get the second scout. So as you can see, 1-star will get you 1 scout, 2-star club will have 2 scouts, 3-star will have 3, 4 gets 4, and then once you hit 5, you double up to 6. Same for the youth scout. So as you can see here, you've got the youth scout, you insert the name, and it tells you how many youth scouts per star that your club is. So 1 for 1, 2 youth scouts for 3, and 3 youth scouts for a 5-star club. Reason I do this is because this will do how many youth players are actually coming into your club as well. I don't ever pull in more than 2 players per youth report. So when a scout returns, if he has 15 players for me, only 2 of those players are ever going to make it into my youth academy. So that also works in conjunction with how many youth players you're allowed. So if you're allowed 16, by having 3 youth scouts, you will be able to get up to 16 players in your youth academy fairly quickly, and then your youth scouts will kind of be sitting around just doing nothing, twiddling their fingers until players are released, and then you replenish. That all seems to be working at the moment for me. That's, like I said, it's a self-employed rule, completely up to you if you want to do that. This just kind of keeps it level and stops you kind of pouring too much into the youth academy. As you can see, the boxes, you've got the region, so you can track where they go. I tend to not send scouts to the same place more than once. You can send, say if you have 2 scouts, you can send 1 scout to 1 region, and then later on, the other scout, you can go back to that same region. That's fine because the scouts work in different things. In here, the experience and judgment, the star ratings. Once again, what I base that on, I will only hire scouts that are the same star rating as the club in whole amounts. So, if I'm a 1-star club, the most I can have in experience is 1 star, and the most I can have is 1 star in judgment. If I'm a 3-star club, I can have a scout that has 3 experience and 3 judgment, or below. So if you can't find that player, that scout who has the exact 3-star, you might go for a 3-star, 2-star, or a 2-star, 1-star. It doesn't matter. It just means you don't exceed what your club star rating is. This will kind of make sure that the scouts are finding the kind of quality players for you and not just bringing you back absolute monsters. And what I do is put a start date and end date. I'll only ever do 3-month searches. This allows the scouts to move around quite frequently. They get 4 scout reports done in a season. And if you are scouting a player to have a look at from a club and you don't have time, but they finish the scout report before you move on, then you just move on, and it's just a case of you just not scouting that player. This will help always not just picking out the best players. You'll be limiting yourself in terms of what the scout reports are giving you, and the same for youth scouts as well. Obviously, when they're in date, you get the full report anyway, so you'll be able to just go for the players. But more so for this scouting section, if you've got 15 strikers and the last 2 strikers that you're scouting don't finish by the time the end date comes up and the scout needs to move on, you just relocate that scout. They don't get scouted. And that is it for staff. Next, we're moving on to scouting. So, scouting, optional tracking sheet. So basically, any reports that come back from the scouts about players currently in the game, I like to keep a track of. Now, once again, this is completely optional to you. You just fill in the details as you go along. What this does, the reason I do this over a shortlist is because a shortlist will tell you, A, when the player's on the move. So sometimes you just won't know. So it's kind of a good way because you might miss out your first target. Whereas with a shortlist, it'll always say, oh, Man United has moved for this player. You need to move fast. So you'll always get your first target. Without the shortlist, you won't know about that. So if you're waiting around to make money by selling a player first, you might miss out on your primary target, in which case it makes you go out and find another target. And it kind of adds that realism of See, clubs do miss out on their first choice player. They go for a player and another club might come in and there's nothing they can do. With EAFC, once you go for a player, they will never reject you for another club. They'll always just sign for you. This just adds a little bit of that to that. The other reason I do the tracking is also because, let's say if I want to look for a specific player, let's say a left back, what I can do is at the top here you have these little filter buttons. So in positions, at the bottom here, so just an example, I'll just fill in left back, and centre back. So now when I click on here, it'll give me the two options. So what I can do from here is untick centre back, press OK, and now it will only show me the left backs. Or vice versa, if I only wanted to see the centre back, not the left backs, press OK, and I can just see the centre backs. So this is a good way of tracking your players that you want to scout without having to worry about your shortlist being absolutely packed full of players as well. And you can also then filter by stats. So let's say the reason you're looking for a left back is because your current left back is an attacking one and doesn't have very good defending stats. So you want a defensive left back. You can actually then filter left back and the defense stat a minimum. So let's say in here you've got 76 and then 80. So you can then say, well, I don't want to look at any 76s, I only want to look at 80 or more, press OK, and it'll show you that stat at all the players that have that option. It's just that I find a cleaner way of scouting, but once again, this is completely optional. If you think it's too much time and hassle filling in data, by all means skip it. It's just one of the optional tabs. And that's it for player scouting. Next we have the youth squad. Now this is optional, but this is also another page including the staff that it's kind of self-employed rules, so it probably is helpful to you. So as you can see here, this will keep track of your youth players, so the name, the positions, nationality, age, height, foot, overall range and potential range. You'll fill in each detail of the youth player so you can keep a view of what's going on. On the right here is just a little it's the same from the staff page. It's just letting you know how many youth players you can have based on your star rating. So if a 3-star club, I'll be able to have 10 youth players. And then on the right hand side here is a youth player generator. So what this does is you wait 3 months. You do not take a player from a youth report until the 3-month has ended. Once it has, it'll give you a list of players depending on I think it's the experience stat is how many players get returned in the report. Now what you'll do is it has 1 to 18. You will hit this drop down box and click on roll. This will pick a number for you. So as you can see, it's generated the number 4. Now from that number 4, we will go on to the scout report. We'll pick the 4th player. Now what this does, this will pick out youth players that you probably wouldn't normally pick up. So it's going to be a player whose potential range is probably a lot lower than what you're looking for. Now by adding this into your tracker sheet, you'll be actually surprised the amount of youth players that come through that don't make to the first team squad in real life. So that is going to control this. This will just stop you just from picking out the absolute worldies, the 90 potentials. This will help you have a youth squad that is random and is quite different. So sometimes you might actually end up promoting a centre-back because you're desperate, you've got no players, who's only got a potential of 70. Well, if they play 5 games for you and then you sell them on for profit, it's still been worthwhile, and it still adds a bit of depth and character to your team, because you do see that in most clubs where they have a youth player come through when they're 17, 18, they play a few games for the first team as a backup option, and then they don't reach their potential by the age of 21, so then they get shipped out and moved on. And this is going to be what this generator does for you. It stops your youth players just coming through and basically dominating. And then when you do actually get a worldy player, an 87 to 94 potential range like striker, they will be incredible for you, and you'll value them more, and you'll want to kind of make them succeed and play them when their overalls is 69 because you know their potential's going to be worth it. So yeah, this is looks as optional, self-employed rules, but it's something I would kind of push for you to help with your career. Next, we have the training. So EAFC24 introduced a new training scheme. It's completely useless. You can pretty much go through a whole season playing the same 11 and never have to worry about whether their fitness or sharpness is a problem. You just adjust the sliders to what you need, and it just sucks. It's really hard to kind of have any kind of squad rotation or any fitness issues. So what we've done here is these are 3 options that I would suggest. It's part of the optional package. It's completely up to you. And looks as creativity. Just apply your own rules if you don't think that this works for you. It's fine. So what I've done is at the start of the season, I will set the training plans just to purely on fitness only, no sharpness. That will run through the pre-season up until the first game of the season. So when you play the first game of the season, you'll have an entire squad completely full of energy, but no sharpness whatsoever. So you'll play the first game. Once you come out of that game, the first thing you should do is go to training again, and then your starting 11, you're going to set it. I can't remember the name. Let me just find it here. So as you can see here, it's a performance focused. So what this will do, this will stop the starting 11 recovering so much energy, but more sharpness. So because they're playing that game, they're going to get really sharp, but they're obviously their stamina is going to take a bit of a beating. The second thing you're going to do is set the bench and the reserves to energy focused. Now these players didn't play or didn't play as much, so they're going to recover a lot more energy, but a lot less sharpness. So what this will do now, once you set that, is when you move forward to the next game, without switching the training plan and just leaving it as it is, your start 11 will be tired. So they will have to be rotated. Now, it's not realistic that the entire 11 gets rotated, so what I've done is I've put in an implement of your star rating of your club will base how many personalised plans you get. And what the personalised plans is for the starting 11 only. So let's say you're a 3-star club. So you've just played a game. You've set your entire starting 11 to performance focused, so they're not going to recover much stamina before the next game, which is in 5 days' time. You get 5 personalised plans. So what you can do is pick 5 players from the start 11. That can include the goalkeeper as well, because they also lose energy. And you can set them to recover energy or more sharpness or whatever you want them to. You choose on that slider the 5 choices where you want them to be. If you want them to be balanced, so they get a bit of stamina recover and a bit of sharpness, that's up to you. But what I tend to do is kind of recover the player's stamina ready for the next game that I think that would be important. So I might look at a game and think, oh, that's a tough game, I'm going to need to be more defensive. I want my best defenders getting the energy recovered, and I can rotate the strikers, or I can rotate the midfielders. As you can see, as the starting rating increases, you have to imagine that the fitness coaches will be better at each clubs, so you get more personalised plans. So at a 4-star club, you get 7 out of the 11, so potentially you'll have to rotate 4 players in and out. And the other 7 would still be starting the following game from the original first one. Now you do this after every single game, and what this will do for you is just add a little bit of rotation, a little bit of planning in terms of fitness, a little bit of looking at, okay, I've got a midweek game and then a weekend game. I want my striker to play all 3 games. It's not going to happen. So I'll just focus. Okay, I'll take him out and I'll put this sort of striker in for the first game because I want him for the next 2 games. And it just adds a little bit of thought to the game because you can't just play your start 11 every single match. If this isn't working for you, if you think that it's still not enough, you can always move it for instead of performance focused, just fully cap it out so there's no stamina recovery. Once again, a bit of creativity, but this is just a guideline on how I'm kind of doing training at the moment. Next is the development plans. So as you can see, just number of development plans, because if you do your entire squad, your squad overalls just fly up and your team becomes overpowered really quickly, especially because the way that the game's broken in the sense of the dynamic potential as well. So instead of kind of limited how many plans you get, how a star rating. So obviously, once again, that's based on the theory of the better the club, probably the better the quality of the coaches. So if you're at a 3-star club, you're going to have 3-star coaches, so they're going to be better. So you get more development plans, more training, more focus. Yep. So that's also a guide on there. As you can see, I'll give a little bit of advice what I tend to do, which is I do kind of flick between. So sometimes I'll give one or two of the plans to like aging players just to keep them going a bit longer and not just focus purely on like the young players trying to get them up to the highest overall as quick as I can. It's just to make the game feel a little bit more realistic and give some depth to your squad. Position changes, same as development plans, it's just the number of position changes that you can do per season based on club, and once again that's just the basis of if your club's better, you're going to have better coaches who'll be better at doing their jobs. So that's how the training kind of works. Okay, so this one's season events. So this was something that I think most people wanted in other sheets that has been used in the past. So as you can see here, you have the player list. So what you'll do is you'll put your players' names in from your squad. Anyone, like obviously, if you've got only that many players, then just leave the rest blank. And then what you'll do is at the top here, you'll have a drop-down box. You select and roll, and what this does, this will pick an event for you. So it'll pick the player that's affected, if it is, and it'll tell you the event. So let's say this is the player, so it's Liverpool. So it's picked Virgil van Dijk. He now has the flu. I'm going to drop from the squad for the next 2 games, or I can play them, but the flu will spread, and I must repeat with another player. So that one's a nice one. It gives you a bit of a choice. Depending on how big the game is, you might want to risk it and play Van Dijk, but then you've got to do the same thing again. So what you'll do, you'll come back and you'll re-roll to see which player then caught the flu of Van Dijk, and then you've got a choice to either drop him for 2 games or see if it spreads and repeat until it's completed. On here, this is just a bit of a tracker, just so you can keep track of the event, and then on here you can say if it's completed. You can say the player affected and then the end date it should be done by. That's just a bit of tracking, just to make sure you keep up to date with the events. Some of the events will not affect a player, in which case, whatever player now comes up, just ignore. And also, some events will ask for like the time affected is open. So let's just re-roll, see if we can bring one up. No. Okay, so basically there'll be ones that say roll to see how many weeks it's affected. So everything is always done in weeks. So if you roll this is going to pick a number for you. And as you see, this one will be the entire season. So let's say it comes up saying that your goalkeeper got injured, which is one that got requested because goalkeepers tend to not get injured in these games. So on here, there'll be an event where your goalkeeper got injured in training, or he had a car accident, or something like along them lines. And you'll have to roll to see how long they're affected. So as you can see here, the entire season, which does happen. We've just seen Manuel Neuer nearly missed the entire season for Bayern. In which case you'll have to go out and buy a goalkeeper, an emergency goalkeeper, to replace your starting goalkeeper. So that adds a bit of depth for the goalkeepers. There is other numbers as well. It's not just the entire season. So as you can see, 1 week. So your goalkeeper's out for 1 week, which is not that much of effect. There you go, 2 weeks and so forth. So this is like a multiplier just to see how many time length is done. For some reason, I'm not sure why this does this, Google Sheets has this thing where when you click on the event, as you can see, it'll say staff member poached. Now when I click on here to choose my role, it changes that one. Not sure why it does it. So what I'd always say is when you're doing this is make sure that's blank. Click on role first, see what your event is. make note of it, because it also changes as soon as you start typing here. But yeah, make note of the event, write it down, and then do your multiplier to see what the time length is, just so you don't lose out in the event. Not sure why that is. I'll try and look in the fix for it, but at the moment it doesn't seem to be a fix. So that is all the optional. If you do not want to, you don't have to do any of this. This is completely up to you. It just adds a bit of depth to the game. None of it is compulsory. The only compulsory part of the sheet is this green one, which is your season sheet. So if I go on there, under this is going to be a lot of information. So I'll quickly rinse through what's on the sheet and then go back and explain each section. So you have the results, you have transfers, you have your squad list, you have your stat tracker, and you have your injury list. So results. This is a way of keeping track of like all the games that you play throughout the season. If you notice the cups, you need more room, you can just copy and paste and just kind of move boxes down to what you need to fill in for, and change the name. So that could be like your League Cup if you're in England, and then your FA Cup, and then your Continental Cup could be your Europa League, your Champions League, or if you're in division of the League 2, you could have that as the Johnson's Paint Trophy or whatever it's called these days, Cup if you want to instead, because they do play in 3 domestic cups in the lower leagues. Here you can see I've got the league name, so Premier League or whatever, and then a number of boxes for you to put your fixtures. If you're playing in a league that has more teams than your standard 20 and you want to increase the boxes, just highlight these 4, hit the blue button and just drag down a couple more boxes and that'll fill in for you. Same for the cup matches. If the cup matches you need to add some more, you can just highlight the boxes that you need and then just drag down, and as you can see you can increase the size. Next you have the transfer section. So this is quite a large section and is linked to a lot of formulas on this. Also, I'm going to say that there's some optional bits in this. It just depends on how much you really care about finances and the quite the governing rules of the game. A lot of it has been adjusted for the Premier League because that's kind of what I know. I don't really know too many different leagues' rules in terms of financial fair play, profit and sustainability. That would have to be looked into yourself and applied. And like I said, once again, if you think that there needs to be adjustments made in any section, contact me on the help channel and I will try to log into your sheet and we can be on a call on Discord and I can just edit it for you there and then. If you'd say to me, oh, in France, our profit sustainability rules are a lot stricter, so I need this changing, so it's a lower excrement, I'd be able to go onto that and do that for you. That's no problem. But yeah, so here you have the transfers in, the position of the player, the team it comes from, the fee, which on here I do say to include the sign-on fees and bonuses. So not just the transfer fee, but also like if you give a player a 1 million signing bonus, add that onto the transfer fee as a total, and the wage as well. If you loan players in, what I'd say is in the fee, just write the loan length, nothing else. So 6-month loan, 1 year loan, 2 year loan, and for the wages, put in the just put a hyphen, dash, and there is a reason for that, and I'll explain. What I'd also say in transfers in to track is contract renewals. The reason being there's no other section to put it, and I think it's just a good way of keeping a way of tracking your money. So let's say I've renewed a player's contract, so I'll fill in his details. Team, I'll just write contract renewal. The fee, so that'll just be for the signing bonus. You're probably thinking that's not going to be a lot, but with the calculator I use, the signing bonus can be quite substantial. It can be like up to 2 million, 3 million pounds that you're paying, depending on the player's situation. And then for wages, once again, just put a hyphen. There's a reason for this. The only time that you actually fill in the wages is when it's a new player actually signs to your club. The rest is going to be filled in a different section where the formulas will pick it up anyway. Transfers out. Once again, just fill in. This is really easy. Just fill in the transfers that the player sold. So the fee. This is the actual fee and not what the board gives you. So you usually get a message saying, "Oh, you sold this player for 2 million." The board has give you 1.6. Ignore that. Just put in the actual fee. So if a clubs give you £2 million for a player, you get £2 million. Put it in. Same for wages. Just fill in the wages what they had before they left. If it's a loan player, in the fee, just put 1 month loan or 6 month loan, and the wages, just put a hyphen. The reason being, the player's going to come back to you. It'll affect your wage budget massively if you're trying to take account of that player being out on loan and you're saving 16 grand a week because that's what the other club is playing. But then when they come back, you've got to find a way to put it back in. It's not going to work, so just put a hyphen. It'll work in the long run. And the other thing is, I personally don't, but I know another player that does. If you get any prize money, so let's say you've succeeded in the FA Cup and you've got to the next round, it'll come up saying, "Oh, you've got an extra £400,000." Just put into here, put prize money, and then put the fee in £400,000 and blank the wages. This will get added into your transfer funds if that's what you want to. Me personally, I don't. I try to think of it as anything the money in terms of, unless it's from a transfer, any money that comes in, the board is dealing with, and that's them dictating what money you get. The board will then decide whether they want to increase your transfer budget or not. Okay, from there we have the section underneath. So this is to do with a lot of the financial fair play rules and FFP, profit and sustainability. This can be optional. The only one I say that isn't optional is these boxes here. So what this is, you'll have a tick box to start with saying, is the club wealthy? So when you see in the club wealthy, what that means is just directly, not so much does your club have a lot of money, it's more as, is your owners wealthy? So you could have where your owner comes in and he owns a club, but he doesn't put any of his own money in. He wants the club to run itself, in which case you won't tick it. But if you've got an owner who's so wealthy, they don't really care too much about their money in terms of, like helping out with putting some money into the club, or, a club that's struggling for money, when they get a transfer, they'll only give the manager like 10% of the transfer fee, whereas a wealthy owner who is not too fussed. Well, so when it say is a club wealthy, that's all based on whether you think the owner is wealthy. By clicking that, you'll affect your transfer budget. There is events linked to it. So at some point, so let's say 3 seasons, and you might get an event where you are currently wealthy, and it says that your owner's struggling, and he's had a tax order. So you'll have to untick, and then that's going to affect your transfer budget going into the future. Start transfer budget. So there's 2 options for this. You can either go with what EAFC will give you at the start. That's no problem at all. So for Liverpool, I think it's something stupid like 85 mil. So let's just put that in. And the starting wage budget, I will tell you how to get that shortly. There's 2 ways of getting that. But so as you can see here, your starting transfer budget, instantly, because I've put the club is not wealthy, you can see that we've reduced it by nearly half. If the club was wealthy, you can see it has been reduced a little bit, but not dramatically. So that's the difference between a club being wealthy and not. So a club like Liverpool, with their American owners, they're quite wealthy in terms of they let Liverpool, they're not like strict with their budgets. They let them spend if they need to. So I would say that the club is wealthy. Here for the starting wage budget, now there's 2 ways of getting this. The first one is when you first start up the game, you're going to be filling in some details on the players, including their wages. Once you do that, it's going to generate a number here for you in this formula. This number will be how much you're currently paying wages per year. So not like a course of a week, or it will say it'll be like substantial. So Liverpool, their wage budget is probably like something to do with like close to 100 million, maybe 85-90 million. In which case you can take that number and you can just copy it into there. not physically copy and paste because that'll copy and paste the formula, but in terms of just write the number that's there into there, and that's your starting. That should be the same when you first start the game. Nothing should affect that as long as you fill in all the details correctly. Players out on loan will affect it, and this is why I don't tell you to just copy what the game tells you as the budget. Always fill it in first, and then you'll see what's put in there. Once you put in the wage budget as well starting, so let's say I did say it was like, let's say 85 million as well. So as you can see at the moment, the club has 127 million to spend. Oh, sorry, there's welfare, so the 153, but that's without deduction of paying the annual wages already. So that will come off once this gets input. That will reduce your wage budget. So every time you sign a player, it's not just going to take out the transfer budget, it's also going to take into account the player's annual wage, and it will remove it from your transfer budget. So not only you've got to think about, okay, I want to spend 10 million on this player, but how much are you spending in wages and bonuses? So this will help keep a good realistic transfer budget. Now, this is the option I did give you for the transfer. The other option is the starting budget. You can set it wherever you want, as long as the game has it. So let's say Liverpool was 85 million, but you decide you want to create a storyline where Liverpool becomes skint. The owners left, so in which case the starting budget could be 0, and it could be a case of you'll have your starting budget annually, and the starting at 0. What this will do once all the other information's in, it'll tell you that you don't have a lot of money to play with. So then you're going to have to sell members of your team to generate finances. So the best way of doing that is selling the highest overall. Say, look, you sell Mohamed Salah. He's going to a Saudi Arabian club for 100 million. You use that 100 million to buy younger, lower rated players, which means you struggle in the first 2 seasons, but then you grow your club back into getting better. And it just there's a little bit of creativity just by editing your starting budget into what you want it to be, and keep following these sheets rather than what the game's telling you, and you'll be able to have a bit of a storyline there as well. But that's completely optional. Next, underneath this section is the FFP. So FFP guidelines state that clubs can only spend £105 million over the course of 3 seasons. That money is usually generated from transfers, wages, agent fees. If they report more than £105 million losses, the club gets sanctioned in points deduction. So the way that I've been doing it is using Transfer Market for the club, and you can look at what the transfer was for the previous seasons. Well, these dates are incorrect, so obviously that will be there normally. Basically, you'll be able to look at the previous seasons, what the transfer was, work out what the wages was, and it'll give you a total of the income. Or you can completely falsify it and make it up just to give yourself a storyline. So let's say you want to make it worse than it was or better, just to give you free spending, up to you. But what this will do, you're keeping track, and you've got to make sure that this total never reaches below 105 million minus. If you do, the next season you'll have to forfeit games to kind of make up that the point deduction that the club would receive. The point deduction, it's hard to call. We've only just seen it recently happen with Nottingham Forest and Everton. I think 4 points is probably the maximum that you can receive, and that's depending on how much money you've gone over. What I'd say is for every £10 million that you are over the 105 budget, deduct 1 point. And that's probably the way I'd work that. Or you don't have to do this at all, completely optional if you want to follow financial fair play. There is rumours that this is being rid of in the next few seasons anyway, so that's up to you. Now, this one is actually in play and will be for the long term. It's UEFA's profit and sustainability. So all clubs across UEFA are doing this at the moment. So what they do is they base it on your previous season's income, how much wages you're paying annually, how much transfers, it adds up to a total amount spending, and basically you're only allowed to spend, I think it's 80% of your club's income. So let's say the income was 15 million. As you can see, this formula I just realised. So yeah, let's say that's 15 million. Your annual wages is 7 million, and you spent 7 million in transfers. So that's 14 million total spending. The percentage of that would be close to 90%, so you'd be over, in which case UEFA would then fine and give you sanctions. So the sanctions could be reduced squad amount, so you'd have to start using youth players. You'd have to look it up with UEFA's. I don't think anyone has been hit with this. I think it's a way of kind of guiding them to stop clubs from overspending and making themselves bust, basically. I know in the Premier League, starting from 25-26, there is a new profit and sustainability rule, which is similar to the UEFA's, which is basically the lowest amount of revenue in the league. So usually it's the bottom club, how much they receive in TV money, which roughly is about 100 million at the moment. You times that by 5, and that gives you a spending cap. So if it's 100 million, you get 500 million spending cap, and you can spend 500 million on your wages and transfers per season. As long as you don't exceed that, you won't get into trouble. So on here, I've created a formula to do that for you. Okay, next. This is the juice part, so the calculators. So what this does, this is going to help you make decisions on whether you can sign a player, when a club comes in for your player, whether to sell them or not. The value that you're going to do as well to make it more realistic, and also the wages that you're going to offer the players. At the bottom is also an average calculator. If you need to work out the average overall of the club. So at the top, it's going to ask you for your team's overall. So you're going to fill that in with your club's current overall. So, like I said, at the bottom, use the calculator. Put your defence, midfield, and attack in. If you need to find this, if you go to team sheets, and then import team sheet, and you'll be able to find every club by going through the country and league, and then it'll tell you what their overall stat is in each one. So let's say club's got 78 in defence, 75 in midfield, and 77 in attack. It'll tell you the overall 77. So we'll fill that in at the top, put 77 in. Now, as you go at the start of the season, I'd suggest you to fill this section in. So what this is going to do is going to ask you a couple of things about your club. Excuse me. So elite heritage club. What I mean by this is, when you hear an elite heritage club, it's something like Real Madrid. You know, a club that's got substantial standing within world football. It can also mean in your league as well. If you're a club, say, in the Dutch league, like Ajax. Now, Ajax me personally, I consider them a World Heritage club that people would know, but PSV Eindhoven probably aren't. But in terms of in Holland, they are a really big club that's won a lot of trophies. So if you're a Dutch club, you might want to click PSV being a heritage club because of their standing in Dutch football. This is completely up to you. And will be a case of, it's just going to take you a decision to decide whether you click that or not. Most clubs won't be. I'd suggest it's probably only the top clubs per league in the top divisions. And then also you have to think whether they're going to have a world standing as well. But yeah, that's up to you to decide if they're a heritage club or not. Next, it's going to ask you the top 5 leagues. Currently, based on UEFA rankings, this is not my choice, this is what UEFA is saying. The top 5 leagues in the world at the moment: the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga, and Ligue 1. Obviously, it can change in the future, so it's up to you. In like 2 or 3 years' time, you look at it, you might want to change. I don't know. It's all going to be interpretation. But if your club is in the top 5 league, give that a tick. Next, you have the Premier League. So the Premier League will always have a pull because of the amount of money that's involved. So if you're a Premier League club, you should tick this. This is going to give your team advantage when signing players, especially from abroad. And then it's going to ask you what competitions are you in. The AFC Champions Cup, the Copa Libertadores, and the Copa Sudamericana. Tick them if you're at any of those, or Europa Conference League, Europa League, or Champions League. Okay, moving on to buy and transfer. Go. So, details we put in here. The selling club overall. So the club that you're going to buy from, you need to search up their team sheets to see what their club overall is. Once again, use the calculator if you need to find out. So let's say I'm going to buy a player from Arsenal. I think Arsenal have an 83 overall. The players overall, the player I want to go for is an 80 rated player. Next, it's going to say, is this player transferred or a free agent? We're going to say no. Does your club have more than 2 compatriots? So players with the same nationality. Now, this could be your choice. If your club in England and you're signing English players, you can choose whether to use that or not. You could just base it on just foreign players only, because foreign players will always feel more comfortable if they have someone with similar nationality to them. So if you say this lad's Brazilian, I currently don't have, so I won't tick it. The Elite Heritage Club is the club that we're signing from an Elite Heritage Club. As I said, it's Arsenal, so I would consider yes. They have a good standing in world football. Is the player over 30 years old? We're going to say no. Is the club in a top 5 league? Yep, they're in the Premier League. Are they a Premier League club? Yes. This one is for feeder club. So is the club that you're signing from one of your feeder clubs? Obviously, it's a no because it's Arsenal. Will you give the player a release clause? In this standard at the moment, as you can see, it's unrealistic this player would sign for me. I can tick this, and it'll help towards it, but it still won't make it unrealistic. And finally, what competition is the club in? Well, they're Arsenal and Champions League. So as you can see, the calculator's come back. It's unrealistic for me to try and sign this player. Now, there's things that can change in that, like it says that if the player is transfer listed, but it's usually because the club and the players overall is way too high. A player who's 80 isn't likely going to leave Arsenal, even if he's getting picked, because he's still roughly in the same sort of region of that club's overall. If this player was a 72 and there was transfer listed, it's still unrealistic, as you can see. Let's put this club as a Premier League club. So let's say it's, I don't know, Brentford. Brentford are trying to sort of play from Arsenal. His rating is 77. As you can see, it's still not good enough. 76. Nope. 75. 74. 73. So 73 was the highest for them to leave Arsenal, even if they're transfer listed, and you'd have to give them a release clause. So as you can see, automatically you're at a massive disadvantage just trying to sign players from higher ended clubs, because players just don't want to leave. If this player was from Luton, who's a little bit lower than Brentford, I think they're about 72 overall, and it was a 80 overrated player, obviously they're not going to be the Champions League. You don't have to give a release clause. They're not a heritage club. Now, let's say Luton, after 2 seasons, have a player that overall goes up to 80, or they've signed a player and his overall's gone up. Brentford will be able to sign because they have a better overall club value standing than Luton would. Look, says these boxes, whether they're in the Premier League or not, is going to make a big difference as well. Next, once you've done all that, make sure that you leave everything ticked once you get the realistic valuation result, and move straight down to your transfer fee calculator. The reason being is the formula actually uses these parts, so don't empty them until you've done the value. So the overall of the player. So as we can see, we put 80, so we'll put 80. His age, we're going to say he's 26. He's not over 30. The reason there's a separate box to the age is because he adds a bonus onto when buying to change the value of the the results, and the contract expiring, deadline day, deal, and winter window. Tick those if they are. Let's say it's a winter window deal, and the game thinks that the player is worth 25 million. Our calculator is going to tell you you're going to have to pay a minimum of 35 million for this player. This is what's going to cause your transfer budget to be really affected because it's giving you a much higher value than the game would. So you're going to have to think more carefully. Not only that, you're going to have to interpret how much you're going to be paying in wages. So it's not going to be 35 million. It's going to add up with the wages as well, possibly up to 40 million. So then do you have 40 million to spend on a player? So these are the things you got to think about. So then we move on to the wage calculator. This player wants to come in as a crucial player because obviously if he's 80 rated, your club's 77, he's going to want to be playing every game. So he's going to come in as crucial. He wants a contract length of 4 years, and his current wage at Luton is £25,000 a week. This will give you the lowest wage offer that he'll accept and a signing bonus. So as you can see here, this player wants 67,500 to move to your club. Now, this will be a case of you determining whether a couple of factors. A, can you afford to be paying this much out? Because 67 doesn't seem like a lot. But when you add that over the 52 weeks, so let me just pick up a calculator. 67,500 times 52 is 3.5 million a year. Add on your signing bonus, so that's 5 million 3. Add that onto your valuation. You're looking at 42 million pounds is going to cost you in total. So there, it's going to make you think about it. Not only that, the lowest wage offer might be higher than your actual current players. In which case, you're going to have to think: would your player get pissed off that a player that's coming in is going to be getting more than they would? In which case, you're going to have to bump up their contract value, which is going to then increase the wages further. So that's how that kind of works. Let me just get rid of this. So that's how the calculator works. Now, it works the exact same way. So this box we don't have to undo, we can just leave for the rest of the season. For also selling. So let's say you got a player who is wanted by Chelsea. We're Brentford. So the buying club overall for Chelsea would be 82. Is the player transfer listed? No. Is it an elite heritage club that's coming for him? Yes. Is it a top 5 league club? Yes. Is it a Premier League club? Yes. Are they a feeder club of yours? No. And are they in the competitions? Yes. So as you can see, telling you here, you must accept. Now, it doesn't actually mean you must accept. What I'd advise is, like I says, creativity of rules. 2 things. Your board's going to want you to push forward because they think they're not going to get the best value from Chelsea, and this is one of the best time to cash in on him. And the other thing is, the player is going to look at a bigger club coming in for him, and if you don't accept, it's going to annoy them, so they will not sign a new contract. So you can reject it if you want to, but just take on board that this player will not sign a new contract after this. So then that gives you a decision then. Do you accept it now, or do you take the chance on saying no, hoping that you excel in the season with that player, get into a better standing to maybe get them to renew later on? But yeah, for the time being, they will not sign a new contract. Okay. So that's how that selling calculator works. Then from there, once again, you'll have to fill in the details of the transfer fee calculator. So the players overall, let's say he was a 79 and he's 29. He's not over 30. His contract isn't expiring, none of that. And currently, the game saying he's worth £15 million. The lowest sorry, the valuation you can ask for is 18.4 million. Now, if a you can negotiate to try to get 18.4 million, but it doesn't mean the game necessarily will do that for you. The game might not accept that. In which case, it'll just be a case of you accepting anything lower, but you cannot go asking for anything above 18.4 million. This just stops you from, because the game is quite easy in terms of finances, and it will overpay for players massively. So this just kind of just stops you from extortionating clubs and just getting stupid money and then going on to romp everything. Obviously, you don't have to do the wages for a selling player. That's not your prerogative. That's it for them calculators. That's how they work. Here, the section for the squad list. This is for the season. So the only real part you need to do in this is the wages. And the reason being for that is because it adds in with all your finances. It'll tell you your transfer budget. If you don't want to do any of the rest, you do not have to. This is optional. But me personally, I like to do it because it helps me keep track of stuff. So the things are your name, you fill in all the details, position, nationality. I will actually, for adding in little details just for myself, I'll add the flags in. Like so, just so it just looks a little bit better. The contract length. What I've done is, if you put a player in for 1 year, you automatically get a red section to tell you that it's running out soon. 2 years is a warning, and then 3 years above will just stay as white. The contract role, so if a player is a crucial, important rotation, don't write it in. All you'll do on this right-hand side, it's all there for you. Just take one of these, important copy, and paste it in. The reason you do this is because on the right hand side I've got a tracker here, and it's going to count each amount of players that you'll have in that role for you. So once the wages, contract role, the contract length's in, you've got the assigned overall, the status. So the status can be a couple of things, and they're just below here on the right again. So they can be transfer listed, loan listed, sold, loaned in, loaned out, and injured. If they're just a player who there, you can just leave it as okay. Then you've got the homegrown and registered. So once again, I do not really know too much about other leagues' homegrown rules. But in England currently, the homegrown rule is a player has to have been at a British club for 3 years before the age of 21. So usually any player that's 18 is playing an a British club, sorry. By the time they reach 21, they'll become a homegrown player. Once they do, they'll start to be tracked. If they're below 21, you can just put this N/A. So let's say your goalkeeper's been filled in, he's from Brazil, and he's only 17. You don't have to fill it in. You can just put N/A, copy and paste in for both those sections, and he does not have to be registered. If he is a 25-year-old Brazilian that you've just signed, he won't be homegrown, so you'll put the X there. And then this will decide if you're going to register that keeper for the season coming up. Now, I don't do this section until after the transfer window's closed, because that's when you'll have to put in, because players will still be moving around. Once that transfer window's closed, that's when I'll start registering my squad. So the squad rules are: you are allowed 8. You have to have 8 homegrown players in your 25-man squad. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have 8 homegrown. It just means if you want to have 25 players who are over the age of 21 registered. So what you can do is just have a squad of 17 non-homegrown players, and then the rest all under 21 players. So that's a way of doing it around it, but basically by doing that, as you can see, it's all going to be filled here on the right hand side, keeping the count. As you can see, the required amount of available players is 18. At the moment, it doesn't think you've got any because it's counting the roles. So once it's all filled in, it'll tell you how many players you've currently got available to use. You have to have an 18 as minimum, otherwise the game will start forfeiting games for you. The homegrown quota, so it's going to count how many of these are in this little green circle. If it's a homegrown player, currently it's saying there's 14 of them. It's going to count to the NA as a under 21, so it's currently saying there's 11 under 21 players. How many the homegrown are registered? So it's saying all 14 of them are registered, non-homegrown registered, and how many in total. So the total amount you can have is 25. That's what it's read. So I'd have to go through this and basically unregister some players. So as you can see, as I just unregister some with the cross, the number is going down. Once it hits 25, oh, that should be black, sorry. Yes. As you can see, it goes back to normal. No problems there. Wages. What this will do, this will count up all your wages here and make a nice total. That number is then used for the finances. And that is why we don't fill in the details in the section here. So this is the only part of the squad list that's really important, because what you're going to do, let's say you put 25,000 in, 12,000, 54,000, 50,000. So as you can see, there are 4 players and they're added up, and it's added up the wages for you in a weekly amount. So over the week, it's going to cost you 141,000 to have those 4 players. And then when we go back to the transfer section, in here, you can see the starting transfer wage annually is minus 7 million. That's how much it costs a year to keep those 4 players currently running. And this is why your starting budget should be the same. Because what that'll do now is bring it back to 0, because it's being taken, accounted for, that's being paid. Every time you sign a player, like I said, you'll fill in the wages there, that's fine. But then, let's say you just signed a player who's on an extra £25,000 a week. So go back over here. You'll fill in the details at the bottom row. Using for 25,000. It's going to add it on for you, and then we go back to transfers. As you can see, your transfer budget's been reduced by 1.3 million, because that's how much a year